Hello, I'm John Lenhart, and welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This is the podcast, the third season, where we're looking finally at Jason's model for everything. His model goes from the numbers 1 to 10. The previous two episodes, we covered the 8, which is the matrix. We covered the 9, which is like the meaning of life. And now today, we get to cover the 7. So, Jason, what is the 7?
So the 7 is an ocean-like field that connects all life.
Whoa. Okay, I'm ready for it. Give it to me. Give me an explanation.
Okay, so we talked about the 8, right? And so now we're working seemingly backwards, right, into the 7. These are more subtle layers of ourself, of our being, of our experience, moment by moment. These are all arising so quickly, though. So we talked about how the 8, the world of appearances, they arise so quickly that it's like the frames in the movie, we miss them. And what happens in the 8 is if we if we get caught up in the screen in the movie, and we forget that it's just the projection on the screen, it's not the source, right? It's not. Then we become hypnotized, and that's the hamster wheel. So we're doing things based on our past habituation, and you understand how this works. It's like this is the dilemma of the unconscious and the unconscious and the conscious, because we have this incredible quantum supercomputer called our brain, called our unconscious, and yet it's if it's programmed, it's going to habituate us to do something, and then we're going to wind up experiencing something and then redoing that thing over and over and over again. I was actually just reading a new study which says like most people are barely above coma, like the parts of the brain, because it sounds like a joke, but they're literally running on this habituation. So when you're in that state, habituated to the past or doing what everybody else is doing, then you live in the suboptimal states of limitation, separateness, boredom, and confusion. But each moment, there is this resonance that's available. That if we listen to that calling, it will lead us back to our nature, back to these optimal states: freedom, ecstasy, flow, and prophetic vision or clarity. We talked about that symbolic pattern recognition. We talked about that last time. So if we go into more detail, but in short, just like when you have a physical pain, your body is sending you a signal like, go easy on that arm, or like maybe you should learn how to fix your posture better, or maybe eat differently if you're having digestive issues. So the body is a feedback system, but it's not trying to punish us. It's trying to bring us back to wholeness, back to the optimal state. So all of that's part of the philosophy here, is that these 4 states are calling us back to the optimal state. So it's actually ironic that we put effort into not letting us achieve these optimal states. And that's what we can call the ego. We talked about that in episode 8. So now the interesting thing is now we're going to actually talk about the more subtle states, starting with the 7, which is right before the matrix of appearance happens. So, and what's crazy is, this is what creates our reality. All these states, because we talked about it. Like when you see things outside, an animal is going to see things very differently. So there's all this construction going on with outside. So now we're going into these subtle layers of where all this dynamics are happening, which create our inner world, our sense of self, everything. So the optimal state for the 7 we talked about last time, this is a review, is ecstasy, to stand outside oneself, which is we all have this deep, we read all these stories of people like Romeo and Juliet, like the power of falling in love is so, it's such a powerful, motif. And it's always like, it's painful. But why do we, why is that such a powerful thing? Because in that state, we're experiencing ecstasy, which you could say we experience it as a child as well, so it's like being in love is almost like going back to being experiencing that part of being a child, where you're not so focused on all of the stories about yourself. And you're also not focused on the other person, right? Like if you're only focused on one person, if it's a one-way thing, that's kind of like a stalker, but if you're in this state where we talked about last time, the mirror neurons, the oxytocin, that's the state of ecstasy. So again, so we're talking about the 7, and this is how you would achieve that state of ecstasy. Because remember, the goal of the 9 is to have all 4 of these optimal states at the same time. So it's really amazing, like what we can achieve. But again, because of the habituation, because of the power of the 8, it makes us think that we are so mundane that, like, we limit ourselves compared to, we're going to find out in these layers just how powerful we are. So yeah, so the 7 is connected to the water, or like I said, an ocean like field that connects all life. But this is not a literal water. This is a metaphor. Water is a metaphor, but it works perfect. So Einstein disproved the ether. People know about Einstein, but one of the things he is famous for is disproving the ether, because the ancient people said there was like this field that connected all life, basically. But then, in like the Renaissance, like physics and, alchemy, like, all what were the Galileo was like, wrote more about alchemy and Christianity than he did about science, so there was like, oh, the ether is this field, and Einstein was like, no, it's space time, it's not the ether. But again, this is a perfect example of a miscommunication, because there is a field, but it's not an external, physical, ontological field that, like, that physicists are looking at the 8. So this is the 7, which is more biological, but it's like, it's really, which is interesting. There's a book called Biocentrism by this genius physicist and doctor who kind of says the same thing. It's kind of helped me come to this. But so the 7 also isn't arising just like the 8, but it's arising even faster. It's more subtle. So it's very hard to measure. It's very hard to notice in ourselves, but we do experience it. Like I said, falling in love, like it brings our attention to this layer that's always there. Or, even if you watch a movie where you get very attached to the characters, you can experience this. So yeah, so we talk about the 5 senses. That's kind of belongs to the 8. But then the sense of touch is very interesting, because the sense of touch brings us from the 8 into the 7. Just like the body is like a bridge between the 8 and the 7, because we have our body as like the physical parts, but then there's this inner sense of being here. And if you could also look at it like, we have our sense of hunger, our sense of thirst. That's kind of like a feeling. So the sense of, we even actually use it linguistically. I feel sad, but also the sense of touch is used to explain feel. I feel the cotton, scarf, but then it also, so there's a deep connection, which Buddha pointed out in the deeper teachings, that the sense of touch and feeling are very connected. So we have these. So the Buddha says hunger is an inner sense of touch. Thirst is an inner sense of touch. Desire, that longing for connection, it's not one of the 5 senses kind of thing. So, but even deeper, beyond all of those sense of hunger and thirst, there's the field. There is this part of us that is one with the field, because this is where it gets interesting when we talk about water. Like, we are the field, like the waves, like the H2O molecules, or the waves are parts of the ocean. They're connected to the ocean, but they also come from the ocean, like water. If you think about it, it goes through these cycles, but it's water. It's a field. It's a system. Again, So we experience this connection to the field deep in our chest. And when we practice, we all think like, I want to feel loved. That's how the movies frame it. But in reality, You feel the ecstasy when you're giving that affection, because that's how the field operates. The field is constantly giving. And the evidence of that is nature. Like, just think about nature. Like, this seed like, there's a gazillion symbiotic things happening. Like, this tree is making shade so this moss can grow, so this bug can come. So the field is just giving. And when we give, we act like who we truly are in the seven as the field. So ironically, when you're feeling sad and depressed and lonely, it's not because nobody loves you, it's because you're not loving others. And the thing is, in Buddhist practice, you can cultivate this. Even, you can go in a cave, even if you're alone, you can cultivate. And they measure all the Tibetan monks in the EKGs, and they show that they're actually creating the signals, the hormones of that. So, but yeah, so it's really, my point is, it's an inner thing. It's the wanting to love, as opposed to feeling that nobody loves you. So, and yeah, and again, when you become sad, unlovable, the way to connect is to give. So it really is. And the more, again, with the eight, the more you confuse the eight. The problem with the eight is it makes us look for what's already in us on the outside, and then we try to control, and we want other people to do what we want them to do for us. You have to make me feel this way, and that's an unspoken thing in most relationships.
Yeah, I love this. You made so many great points. I think, we know the four thought processes, and you said most people are just above coma. That's that 160, or that regulation, that habitual, addictive, floating around thought process. You're right. The next thought process up is the focus, or the conscious. And then the thing is that in order to flow, it's between focus and unconscious.
Mm.
And I like what you said, is the eight is, you're in a movie. If you think that you are actually in that movie, then you're going to get sucked into that movie. You're going to play it by those rules. You're not going to get anywhere. We talked about the only way to get to the 9 is to go back to the 7. And you're saying to step outside yourself, which is like, do you realize that you are a character in that movie? That is that stepping back to the 7, and that your unconscious is really driving everything. And that ecstasy, which you taught me, I think you taught a lot of people here, that what that word really means is to be outside yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
this ecstasy, are you taking a moment to get outside yourself, see the 8 as this projection of a movie, get back to who you really are in the 7, and the proof of who you are is when you give. When you
Mm-hmm.
give, because you're in control at that point, and you're going to give according to who you are. So I love everything here, is that really getting back to the 7 is being who you are. And then when you operate from the 7 into the 8, you're going to achieve the 9. So it makes complete sense. But this water analogy is really,
Oh,
really
again,
interesting. I'd like to hear more about that.
you're gonna love this. But and I just want to say, you're totally right. And you you're right by saying the 7 is the real you, but you're also the 6. It's actually like deeper
Well, I'm
and
sure
deep.
you get even more real
Yeah,
you, but
but
the
I love
7's
that,
more
because
you than the 8 for sure.
exactly. But it's all you. It's all it. But the thing is, with the 7, it's like, again, like as a baby, Freud called it the ocean like experience, or ocean like perception. Like, the baby doesn't know it's in its body. It just
Right,
feels, it sees its mother. It thinks that's them. That's pure
right,
ecstasy.
right.
You know what I mean? Babies are flooded with oxytocin when they're breastfeeding. Mothers get flooded with oxytocin. So that's why that's all. It's like what all these things do. We're going to talk about at the end, how to get the 7. It's all bringing you back to who you are in the sense of the 7, because who you are in the sense of the 6 is your uniqueness.
Right,
We'll get to next week.
right.
But who you are in the sense of the field as life itself. And again, like Jesus described, I think Jesus has a lot to do with the 7. We'll get into that too. But you know, um, you talk about in your book how we are the, like, humanity all coming together, all life coming together, I would say, is the bride of Christ. So there is like the Christ pervades the whole thing. That's how the seven pervades it, with this feeling of we're all connected, and yeah. So yeah, that's so, and everything is a field, and the thing to remember is fields within fields within field within.
Hmm.
There is a field. The seven is the field, but especially when things manifest in the eight, it gets very fractal.
Right.
So, and that's why it's so confusing. The eight, like you said, you forget you're a character in the movie. It's like the Matrix. You put on this headset, and now you got this cool character, and you're here to learn and play, but you forgot that you're that, and now you cut yourself off from the seven, and now you feel disconnected, and everyone's like, no, 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 we're trying to love you. The whole system's trying to love you. Nature, every moment, is trying to bring you back to wholeness, and you keep pushing it away further and further and further.
Right.
So it's a interesting thing, and morphogenic fields. Rupert Sheldrake, one of my favorites. Like, he talks about, like, these fields that, like, how does the monkeys know in another island how to wash the sweet potatoes? Like, there's evidence, which we'll get into too. And I was going to say also, the hippies at their best are like real seven type of people. Like, they're all about, like, community and, like, being close to the earth and nature. So the nature, I keep bringing this word up, nature. And nature means many things philosophically. But when I say nature in the seven, I mean it the way the hippies mean it, the way the Native Americans mean it. It's like Gaia, the Gaia principle, right? And, some people don't like nature. Like, there are definitely people who don't like bugs. They want artificial foods. Like, we all know those people. But for the most part, when you go in nature, a lot of people, they don't go in, they live in Manhattan, and then they don't go in nature for a year. And then they go in nature like, oh, this feels so good. And there's a therapy in Japan. I actually forget the word. It's like, I forgot the word for forest, but it's like forest bathing, they call it. And like, doctors are now prescribing that in Japan because it lowers your blood pressure better than a prescription drug. Just being in, and and again, the analysis says, oh, it's these essential oils that the plants are giving off, these subtle, and that's true, but it's one of a gazillion things, because the seven is very synthesis, which we'll talk about. So other ways to feel, because yeah, we got to go because there's so much. It's going to keep getting deeper. So yoga, massage, enjoyable exercise, not beating yourself up, or a relaxing day with a loved one. These remind us of the experience of ecstasy, which is the optimal state available to us every moment when we come to understand it. So that's what I'm saying. It's not like you gotta, have sex. If you're single, you can. There's ways to plug into this. So this is crazy. This is so. I recently learned this that an ocean, we think of it as like all these, we know it's H2O, and we just think it's like H2O molecules moving around, but it's actually a very tight grid of molecules, and energy is like moving through it. And most of the molecules move, and they pull everything else with it, but then they return back to where they were. So most of the molecules in the ocean don't move. And this is crazy. So they could form 4 hydrogen bonds, the H2O molecules, and they connect and disconnect 1/trillionth of a second. They're forming and recreating bonds a trillion times, or 300 billion times every second. That's what water is doing. Like the water in your cup. It's so. This is just to show, again, this is a metaphor, and energy moves through this, and the way it's to think about it is like in a stadium when they do the wave, everyone goes around and does the wave. That's how water moves. It's energy moving. So think of these 3 concepts. There's the ocean, the field, the stadium of people. There's the individual people, and then there's the wave going through it. So that's how we have to start thinking about the 7, which is the ultimate of these type of fields. And then once you understand that, you can understand every other field. So, so in this metaphor, so this is, we are in the 7, quote unquote. We're arising from the seven, but we're technically the lower numbers happen within the seven. So it's like it's within, but it's also without. That's what's so confusing about it. But by the time we go through all the numbers, it's going to make more sense how it works. But so in this metaphor, this field, this principle, which again has not been measured by science, but we've seen evidence in other systems. But this thing that connects us, field, the being, that piece in our heart which connects to the field, is like the H2O molecules. And again, they're always, even that, if we go deeper, the molecules are mostly empty space, but right. But but that point where we all connect is the field. So there's a part where we are the field, like the particle and the wave, you could almost say, like we're the field and the individual. And then there's these things called emotions, energy in motion, moving through these nodal points. So we are a nodal point, like the H2O molecules. We're not actually moving, but these things are moving through us on an emotional, because remember, things move around in the matrix, in the 8. This is before there's actually like an embodiment, but this is right where embodiment happens. So the 7 and the 8 are connected. They're considered body, interpersonal, where the 5 and the 6 are more mind, right? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next time. But so all beings are expressions of the same field. Our life force comes from this field. And you could, again, there's so many metaphors we see in the movie, like someone's like fighting to stay alive. I saw this with my own eyes. My grandmother's second husband, who was like a grandfather to me, he begged my grandmother to let him die. Like he was like, I'm holding. So we have this thing with the life force where when you approach death, like you start to see, oh, I can like let go of this kind of thing. But you could also hold on longer. And he was in a lot of pain, and he held on to keep her. It was, and then he saw I was around, so he's like, okay, I'm dying, and he died. It was pretty cool. But so also, appearances, everything that arises is not separate from the field, right? And then we are, and then also, modern physics terms, the quantum field, it's a field and there's excitation. That's why Einstein didn't like quantum physics. And since then, they've been trying to unify Einstein's relativity with quantum physics. And it really is like these fields, like this mandala principle, which again, the Buddha was talking about. So moving on, yeah, like the yoga, the somatic people, right? So there's people which we'll talk about when we get into like the 4, that we tend to all gravitate towards certain elements in ourselves. So like I said, the hippies tend to gravitate towards the 7. The yoga people. So the people who have these spiritual experiences through doing yoga, right? You hear that all the time. Like, I've released this, or like they're feeling disconnected and sad. They're like, I need to do some yoga and now I'm going to feel better, or dance it out, or, oh, you're there. Okay. Yeah. They have to dance it out, or like yoga or Tai Chi, something somatic, or get a massage. There's also like people who are sex addicts, there's all types of things. But my point is that these people tend to think if it feels right, it is right. So if you worship this field, if you think like the 7 is the divine, you're going to say, if it feels right, I trust my heart, I don't need evidence. Which again, it's powerful, and this is a powerful force, but here we're talking about balancing all 4 is like the optimal. And again, Jesus very represents the 7 well. The Lord's Prayer is such a perfect prayer to connect to the 7, because forgive us so our Father can forgive us. Forgiveness is one of the best ways to reconnect to the field, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So yeah. So any questions so far on that? Like.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts on that. First of all, I love this field thing. Now I understand why you're saying it, that this is something that I do a lot of. I wrote this series Beyond Linked. There was a book that came out 20 years ago, Linked, and basically it talked about how everything's a network. And the networks, really, if you think about it, there are a bunch of nodes, and then there's links between the nodes. So every network is characterized by how many nodes and how many links and the ratios between it, and how that works. Well, the nodes don't move, and the nodes in and of themselves are not important. What's important are the links. So all the energy is in the links. All the profitability is in the links. It's not in the nodes. So we make the mistake, and you mentioned ego being hindering all this. That's a beautiful way of saying this, because the ego would be focusing on the nodes. I'm a node, you're a node, I'm an awesome node. That's ego. The benefit is not in the node. The benefit is in how we interact. It's in our link. So that's where we want to be looking. So when you think about it, the ocean analogy is interesting, but this is very fractal, because this is like the brain. When you did that an ocean analogy, and you said there's three parts to it. So there's the individual molecule, there's the whole field, all the molecules in a sense, and then there's the wave or the energy through it. Our brain is the same way. There's a dendrite. That's like the smallest unit in your brain. Dendrite's the Greek word for tree. Your brain is made up of dendrites or trees. So you got your whole brain, and then you got the dendrites in your brain, and then you got the energy or the connection between them. And brain waves is there's a cycle or a wave of energy that goes through your brain. And depending on your thought process, how fast or how slow that cycle is going through your brain. So I think a brain metaphor also works as well as the ocean metaphor. And so I think all of this to me is kind of coming together, that we need to be synthesis. We need to see the whole. Then we can look at how the parts interact with each other. And then we'll be able to say, okay, now what is it we're trying to do? And you were mentioning these, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves by mentioning these earlier numbers, because there are systems within systems within systems. Absolutely. So I think you're nailing that. So overall, I do think that ocean analogy, along with the brain analogy, with the dendrites and the waves of the brain waves, there's cycling of energy through the brain. All of that kind of comes together. And really, the minute we start looking at we instead of me, and the minute we give up that ego, I think we're going to see that seven. The ego is the enemy of the seven. The minute we start thinking of me, the node, we don't care about the link, and we lose all the profitability. So that's great. I think this is amazing. Let's go.
Were you
Let's
here?
keep going.
You were going? Okay, great. Yeah. So I got a little booted out, but we can fix it. Yeah. So the idea of holism, we hear this word holistic health, but most people have no idea what that means. So in summary, the word holistic means this principle that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Perfect.
Right? So you can
Yep.
think of hydrogen and oxygen. That's like it forms water. It's completely different. But you see this this idea of synergy in herbalism. It's a big thing in herbalism, but it applies to all systems. Again, biology. So, for example, you could take a grapefruit, right? A grapefruit has thousands of different pieces to it: flavonoids, carotenoids, limonoids, essential oils, organic acids, vitamins, fiber, natural sugars, bitter principles, enzymes, right? That's a grapefruit designed from the seven. Because again, what makes all these beautiful colored fruits and all these different flavors? It's all the seven. It's like so. It's like pure giving, and these fruits, these molecules in these fruits, we eat them, and they happen to like completely fit like a lock and key with our. I mean, like when you understand the seven, it really makes you feel like, oh, I'm plugged in. Like I am, that's why the ancients would call it like Mother Gaia. Like I'm with my mother. I'm plugged in. So, but then the scientific people, the eight scientists, the Bill Gates, they're extracting one molecule called naringin, and then they
Right.
put it in a pill. And sometimes that's a good idea. Sometimes, strangely enough, you do some chemical things and you get something miraculous. But like, for example, aspirin, it comes from something called white willow bark, which the Native Americans and all over the world, they've been using white willow bark for pain relief. They were able, Bayer, a Nazi corporation, was able to extract aspirin, acetylsalicylic acid. But I take white willow because it has so many other good qualities. And what happens in the holistic form, it usually cancels out the negative things. Like aspirin will give you an ulcer if you take too much. You can't really take too much of white willow bark. So again, it's like, but you can't patent white willow bark. You can only patent that's the whole thing. Yeah, it's like
Right.
it's all legal. It's all like the aid is all about the legal system and that kind of stuff. And again, we're not here to. The aid is very interesting. It's a necessary piece, So yeah, so you could see that the interactions between the compounds of the grapefruit, the ratios. Again, when we say carbs, the grapefruit has carbs, but it has thousands of other things which cancel out everything you're afraid of the carb. The grapefruit actually and the blueberry actually does the opposite of what you're afraid of the carb. It regulates your blood sugar. So everyone's like, oh, if you eat carbs, you're going to get a blood sugar spike. That's not true. Not if you eat a grapefruit or a blueberry, or most fruits don't do that, And even the ones that do that, they do a million other things that are good. So again, the analysis is like, let's look at one measurement in one experiment. And remember, the weirdest thing about the 8, and we're going to get into this in the 6, is you can't do an experiment without changing the outcome. So that's why, the ancients, they were philosophers, scientists, mystics. You can't really separate it. So the just the balance of the stuff, the fiber, the vitamin C, all that stuff goes together in the grapefruit. But that's also true in our DNA. So they came out and they said 98% of our DNA is called junk DNA. You haven't heard this? Okay, yeah. So they
No.
said so they said that when they looked at the DNA, there's these codes that don't, they're not creating they don't have they don't make the RNA which make the proteins, so they don't do. So they just said this is junk DNA. For decades, this was the idea. But it's funny. It turns out like some worms have more genes than the human.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's not the genes, it's the field. So the junk. So now we know, and again, most scientists don't even know this, but this is well researched. The junk DNA regulates gene expression. It controls timing, intensity, and coordination. It has structural roles in chromosome folding. It enables epigenetic responsiveness. So that's the whole other thing, is that what they're calling junk DNA is actually how we can control our genes. Because we've always been told you get your genes from your parents, and everything is genetic. Like that was the science for so long, but there's parts of the genes actually can change. And yeah, so the whole pattern of the genome matters more than the individual genes. So yeah, it's the same type of thing. And this is, I'll just go through. We mentioned water. Fluid dynamics follows this. Neuroscience, because we call it brain waves. So again, you can't find consciousness in a neuron. And there's more connections. You have more neuronal connections than all of the stars in our galaxy. Okay, like it's like it's more atoms. It's like it's crazy. There's actually more neuronal connections than atoms almost. It's almost mind blowing because they're all connected to each other in like so many ways. But again, those are just nodal points. We're looking at the nodes instead of seeing it's a brain wave. Consciousness is this sweeping effect. And again, every thought you have is like billions of like neurotransmitters flushing. It's like liquid, literally. We have like liquid and waves. It's crazy. So, and energy. So yeah, again, ecosystems. We see how they form this balance. Like, the wolf and everything is in this thing. And, quantum particles, particle waves. We talked about that. So yeah. And also, yeah, like the way birds will just like all know to turn at the same time. they're in that ecstatic state where they're functioning like an organism. And again, think about an ant. Ants are fascinating. I remember doing a science report in fourth grade on ants, and just like they have this queen, but so they really are like one brain. It's like the queen, and if you take the queen away, the whole colony falls apart. So there's like this, it's like things are so much they're more mysterious only because our science has done everything it can to eliminate the seven from the conversation. You know what I mean? Like, um, so we talked about how like, the human and the DNA. Yeah. So, and then this concept of the energy and motion. So again, the human emotional system, we're having these emotions go through our bodies, but then we're affecting other people emotionally. So again, it's just fractal, like the field within the field. So the waves, the emotions are the waves, the individuals are the molecules in the ocean, the relationship are these currents that flow between the nodes, communities are the tides, and that's why when people, it's so true. Like when you meditate or you pray together, it has a completely different effect, and it makes perfect sense because prayer is you're trying to connect to that field, and others are doing it, and they're already connected to the field, so you're consciously connecting to the field together, and that's true across distance. You don't actually have to be physically near each other, but it does work too. So and then the field, you could say ecstasy is the optimal state. Pleasure is what is the normal state, so people are seeking the pleasure. So if you're not connected to the optimal state, you're going to seek pleasure, you're going to avoid pain. And then like hatred is the worst state. That's when you're hating other parts of the field, which is like hating, yourself in a way, because you're the same nature. And again, when people meet, just like, two people come together, they become greater. And that's true on all the elements, fire also, because that's why the 9 is coming together on all 4. So, so now let's get into some interesting evidence. Oh, I haven't even mentioned this yet. Like the neurotransmitter connected to this is oxytocin. So just something to keep in mind. That's the optimal state. So anything that increases oxytocin is going to be connecting state. Again, we think of it as like the oxytocin is causing the state, but it's more the other way around. Being
They call
connected.
it the hug drug. And
Yes,
so I like how it's like trying to talk about this hugging or this, connectivity and bonding. So
exactly.
node and link, I really like what's resonating with me is this whole node and link, and this seven's the network. So I love this.
Exactly. So the mother child, for example, and I witnessed this like just 2 weeks ago. It was such a funny, beautiful thing. So I go to this drum circle, and it's really cool because again, think about like a generative community, a sensible community. There's a bunch of women, mothers. They bring their kids. The kids are running around. There's always some mother looking after the kids. One of the mothers, she's drumming. She's facing the drum circle. Her kid, like she's so into it. She's in a flow state, right? She gets into flow. I go over to say hi to her. She comes out of the flow state, gives me a hug, and it's like, "Where's my son?" And she looks up, and the second she looks up, she's pointing in the direction of her son. Like she was not paying attention. She was like, "Where's my son?" There he is. So, and I've seen mothers do this all the time. How do you explain that? It's the field. Like it wasn't like she doesn't have eyes on the back of her head. Like she's not seeing it. He's far away to hear. She just knew where to look. And it's like it's fascinating. So and mothers could know at a huge distance if something happened to their kid.
Yeah, there's people who are saying now that there's part of the mom's DNA in the kid for giving birth to him, and there's part of the DNA in the kid to the mom, or part of the cells. So, but how are they communicating? You're saying it's through this field, but they are communicating so the mom dies
Mhm.
and the kid has cells in their body from the mom and they feel those cells die and then they go, something happened to my mom. Or your mother's intuition is if she goes, I know there's something wrong with you, and she lives in another town, it's this, your cells in her body are feeling that. Now, if she's not stepping back, being somatic and listening to her body, she's not going to have that mother's intuition. If
Exactly.
she's egotistical and she's being very conscious and looking past all that, she won't have that. But we all, I'm going to say all the moms have this ability, and all the kids to their mom have this ability, and it is a field. How else would you explain? There is a connection. It's
Mhm.
immediate. It's clearly not physical. There's a field. So I like that. Great
Exactly, and
analogy.
it's the same thing. Is not just mother and child, but lovers can find each other. And again, remember, this is funny because like how technology works. Before we had cell phones, imagine like you go to a busy concert or some place and you get separated from someone. Like, how the hell did you find each other? Like you did. Now you can text each other and stuff, but like there's just like we didn't think about things too much back. And then the technology comes out that does it for us. We're like, how did we do it? The field explains it.
That's a really cool point that I think when we get through all these numbers, we're going to talk more about stuff like this, because there's several things that cross the numbers. There's
Mhm.
several concepts that we go, well, that's not just happening in 7, it's happening in 5, it's happening in 3, so we will definitely say that. But I like what you just said is these things used to happen and we knew it, we talk about it, but we weren't really conscious and we really couldn't explain it. Once we got the technology, we stopped thinking about those things. Earlier, you talked about people dying and making the choice in a sense to die. Well, when you see people talk to the relative who's on their deathbed, they say, hold on, don't go.
Yep.
Like why are you telling them to hold on and not die if you don't believe there's a choice in there to let that go or not?
Exactly. They
So we
see it
all
just
know
like,
that intuitively. We
yep.
don't really talk about it. And you're right. Technology's come in and stopped us even thinking about it.
And that's why this is the interesting thing about the 8, and this is why this whole thing is a video game. You're the character, and you get to go into the 9 or keep staying in the 8 for a long, long time. But the point is like, what was I going to say? What were you just saying about the?
Like the technology stopped
Oh
us
yeah,
from
the
talking
technology.
about
Yeah,
this.
yeah. So technology is a very interesting thing because again, the 7 is the source of all technology. I mean, and this is transcends all of that. Like this is so every technology. Interestingly, the 8 is, remember, the screen. It's all symbolic of what's deeper. So yeah, all the technology is going to be imitating these things, and they could become a great teacher. That's what's so cool about this. Like this whole model wouldn't be possible without me knowing computer science and engineering and all, and even this idea of the water molecules. This is you. We didn't know, they didn't know this. So this is why it's so cool. But if you worship the idol of the technology, now it actually works against you. So
Right.
it's neutral. Everything in the 8 is neutral. There's no
Right. You're gonna
they.
miss out. You're gonna miss out. So really, I love what you said. The technology, it's the 8, it's imitating the 7. The
Mhm.
7 is much stronger than the 8, much more efficient and effective.
Mhm.
But if you don't develop that 7, that ecstasy, getting outside yourself so you experience the 7, then you're going to rely on the 8. And then that is going to make you never
Mhm.
be able to experience that 7.
Yep.
And so the 7, and it's AI.
Yep.
AI is the ultimate 8
Yes.
creation. And the thing is that whenever me or Ed Mabry puts something into AI that's revelatory, it freaks out and it can't handle it because because we're the 7 is where creativity is happening. It's where the real stuff is going on, and AI cannot match the 7. And so you can't give something revelatory to the 8. It'll that's something that's purely 8. It won't happen. What we're talking about right now is a lot of 7.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're watching this and you can't get this, it's okay. You're probably stuck in the 8 and you need to take your time.
We're going to talk about it.
But we are interested in the people who can understand the 7, because when we go talk about I think next week we should talk about the 5 and the 6, because we can see how the 7 and an 8, a lot of what we're talking about really is 7 and 8, not just 7.
Right.
And I think next week we talk about the 5 and 6, because the 5 and 6 interact like the 7 and 8 interact. So
exactly.
I love this discussion because it's lock and key with the 8.
Yeah, it really is. It's all part of the dynamics. Like we'll explain this eventually, but yeah, the 7 and the 8 like go together. It's such a divine design.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I was just going to say about the technology. Well, we could move on. Yeah, the technology is yeah. We'll move on for it. But so feeling watched, right? There's a sense of being watched. Animals feel it. So they call it animal magnetism. There's all types of things. What is animal magnetism? Like they can seduce, all types of things that are, animals are very plugged into the field. So animals are very plugged into the 7, but they're still trapped in the 8 in their own way. Again, we talked about birds flocking. Also, like biochemistry. Oh yeah, like one of the most fascinating things, you have a single cell, right? Like the sperm and the egg make a single cell, and then that splits into 2, and then to 4, and then to 8, right? Just like the model, then to 16. How do those cells know which one to become the liver cells? The field explains it. These are all the unquestioned. How does consciousness arise from neurons? It's explained with the 7. And also, what was I going to say? Also about the DNA. Well, yeah, and just the communication across the body. Like we could explain it neurologically, but there's more to it. Okay, yeah. So remember, ecstasy, oxytocin is the key. So now this is the fun part. You could say that the 7 is immediate, raw, naked feeling. Remember, we said feeling can become something you touch, but it's also energy in motion. Before we judge it, before we turn it into a concept, before we put our preferences on it, that's when they become ego emotions, as opposed to just energy in motion. So again, there are some women tend to be more plugged into the 7. That is part of it. And so they, there is like that, just trusting the flow. Like, I don't know why I did that. It just felt right. So there is a power in that feeling, but we'll talk about without the 5, 6, you can be plugged into the field, but we talked about, you won't know where your energy is coming from. You won't be able to.
You won't be able to do it intentionally.
Yeah,
you won't be able to do it intentionally.
Exactly.
But you can have moments. I like what you're saying. You can have moments of flow in response, and the 7 is flow in a sense.
Yes.
You can't do it intentionally, but it is that experience of flow. And the moment you get conscious, the moment you get egocentric, you're out of it.
Exactly. So we're trying to.
Technology is trying to make us more egocentric so that we get habitual.
Yeah.
So it's taken us really to self-regulation so strong and wearing us out that we go to regulation. And we're zombies. We're above a coma, like you said. So yeah.
But you're right though, and that's what's interesting, because again, I know you've been into technology forever. Like 3 years old, I was doing computer programming with my dad, and I've been watching this, and I realized, when I was 22 and everything was a .com bubble, I'm like, where is this going? Like, I realized, like, what is everybody doing? Everybody's like the ants, right? They don't know what the individual ants don't know what they're doing. But they could do amazing things. These ants, like, they could like create a boat and they all float together. I mean, they could do things that don't make any sense. Again, because it's the 7. Because their brains, they don't have a brain. but the 7 is so full of information, and this is so cool, man. This is like, even this, we're experiencing the 7 right now. Like, these ideas are emerging out of both of us, like
Right.
in this moment. But I just wanted to say about AI, though, is that it really is like, okay, so people are going to work, like, this person's a teacher, this person makes food, but like, what are we all doing this for? Where is this heading to? And it was just like, what keeps happening? Technology keeps getting better. Everything else is falling apart. Like, health is falling, there's like, the social structure is falling apart. The 7 is falling apart, in our culture, you know, and we just keep getting more and more. And then we got AI, and now we're here, So it really is. AI really is the perfect metaphor for the 8. But I do want to say that I have moved beyond all these ideas of we're the victim, because you can't be the victim, because you realize everything is a choice. The 7 is trying to, it's like, look at it, it's a mother. It loves you all the time. You're always plugged into it. Suffering is just disconnecting from it, but you can't even really disconnect from it. That's the funny
Right.
thing.
But everything you taught me in season 2 was really ecstasy. If you
Mm-hmm.
really think about it, everything in there is can you step outside yourself
Mm-hmm.
and not get sucked into the matrix and be aware of what's going on really in you, rather than get stuck in the movie and then think you're a victim of the plot line.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Exactly.
really, and so in order to make the matrix your friend,
Yeah.
you got to start getting backwards out of it. And the 7's just the first step in making the matrix your
Well,
friend.
thank you, because there's many ways you could approach this model. Everyone's different. Everyone's on their own journey. The
Right.
traditional Buddhist path is to go from the 8 to the 7 to the 6 to the 5 to the 4 to the 3, and then the more advanced ones, they actually do go to. But I think, especially in our modern times, where the 8 is really to introduce people to the 9 first. Because a Buddhist would be like, we're not going to talk about the 9. You're like, just work on getting to the.
Well, they don't trust people. What I learned in season 2 is they don't trust people to not be destructive once they learn the real answer.
Exactly.
So they always hold the real answer late, and I tend to give the real answer up front and then help people get there. And the problem is, and I think Buddhists are right, is sometimes I teach people the real answer and they go, that's all I needed. And then they go off and be destructive and come back and go, you said this. I'm like, and a bunch of other stuff that you didn't stick around for, you took off.
That's it. It's like you introduce them. We even call this like introducing, like when there are some teachers, like lineages, where you do start with the 9, where they do start with the highest. And what they do is they say, this is the introduction to reality, right? So, but you have to be on such a high level for that to work. But I've come to the terms with, like, because I used to be the same way. Like, I'm not teaching people, like, you got to master the, like, 8 to the 7. But give people the 9, the glimpse of it, knowing this is what you're going to get. And if you think, because a lot of people have a tendency with the ego to think, oh, I'm already doing all that. Oh, I must be. It's like you'd be having so much ecstasy and so much, prophecy. Like, when's the last time you had a prophecy? But anyway, yeah. So here's the cool part. Oh, like, yeah. So like we said, you're going backwards to the 7 to the 8. So the 7 is, in a sense, everyone's different, like, but for most people, connecting to the 7 is kind of easy to access.
Yeah.
You're in the matrix. So how do you do it? I made a whole bunch of lists.
Okay, so we're going to get a list of how to get into the 7. Let's hear it.
Exactly.
Let's hear it.
Go into nature. Go to the beach.
Okay, so the thing about this is that nature is fractal.
Mm-hmm.
Nature actually has a geometry and a math that is truly synthesis and not man-made. And I believe when we walk into nature, we unconsciously see the right answer, in a sense. Okay. And I love something you said. You said something earlier that was really, I'm still thinking about, because it's chicken and egg now. So the 7 is reality. The 8 is the the version of it that we create.
Mm-hmm.
It's the technology. And then what happens is we end up using technology and science that we learn to explain the seven. What you learned about the water, like when I was in college getting a chemistry degree, they used to tell us that every water molecule was really a macromolecule of 6 water molecules.
Right.
So now it sounds like they've done enough research and they go, no, it's really 4, and they probably they weren't measuring picoseconds, trillionths of a second when I was in college. So it probably they were measuring it at a much slower rate and seeing 6 at a time. Now they're more efficient and they're going, it's really a macromolecule of 4. But I had heard that before.
No, but
the thing
I want to say you are right though, because it's I think it's 2 different things. There is 6 that fit together. Again, the number 6 like a pencil, the number 2 pencils because it's the perfect shape in nature. But
right.
There is something to that. The way we absorb water, they used to think it was osmosis. It's actually fits these 6 pieces of water fit in. But here's the thing. Water from your bottled water doesn't have the 6. It has to come from fruits and vegetables.
You call it structured water. You
water.
taught me that before. And
That's
so
it.
I've learned that. Like I eat watermelon now,
yes,
instead of drinking water,
exactly.
because the watermelon, you're right. I feel like I'm less thirsty
cucumber
eating watermelon than drinking water.
Perfect. What were you going to say though about?
So I just want to just make this point from before that I love the thing that you're saying is that we end up using technology and science to explain the field in these metaphors. So
look at Einstein. He disproved, like after he disproved the ether, it was like, oh, there's no field, and like it's just this mathematical thing called space-time. Which again, that's why I loved Ed Mabry, because he talked about the speed of light changing.
Right.
Because the 8 is the laws of physics. But it's interesting because physicists think of themselves as the top dogs. Like we are the ground of reality. But this guy who's like, seriously, he's considered one of the top 10 smartest people in the world. It's called biocentrism. And he proved actually biology is the 7 is before the 8. So but it's so pervasive. Christians went to these schools. We all have these chemistry classes where the whole school system is like building towards like this 8, explaining.
See, we could do this. We could do this all day. We'll do this after we get through everything. We'll be talking just like this. So I'm sorry. So be in nature. That was the first thing. I completely agree.
And you're
Let's
right.
see if I can stop commenting on these.
But I love what you said.
Completely agree.
I love what you said because it's the golden ratio, the Fibonacci series. When you're in nature, that thing that
unconsciously.
It's it's a mirror of the 7 in the 8. And then you got the Gospels. Read the Gospels, especially the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
That is, to me, like I said, I studied Buddhism and then I found the Gospels and I got so much connected to the 7 more than I did before. Hugs and cuddles, we talked about that. A fun fact is, first of all, women are always touching each other more, right? But women also can get oxytocin in a 3-second hug. It takes men a 7-second hug.
The thing, and again, I don't want to keep commenting all these things, but you're nailing these points. One of the things that I taught my community like 6-7 years ago was I saw data that said women instead of men they get more of a physical health benefit from touch than men. Men are always the ones saying, I want to be touched and everything. But literally women need a hug. They need a touch physically to start their physical health. So, yeah.
And it's funny because again, men take 7 seconds, but you're right. What I'm realizing, men get oxytocin through this, what we're doing right now, like collective, like men are supposed to be. So we do. That's a great point. Men and women do connect to this field differently. Great point. So be vulnerable and share. So again, that comes down to finding the right people, though. But being vulnerable and sharing, and like saying something that you might have a hard time sharing and being accepted, boom, you're plugged into the field.
So far, all these have been unconscious, but that one is probably the most unconscious because you can be vulnerable and share with nobody around because it's to your unconscious.
That's true.
So every one of these so far is complete. Because even reading the Gospels, it's like you can sit there. People make the mistake of reading the Gospels and getting conscious. There's a lot of stuff going on unconscious. So I love this list so far. Keep going.
How you describe the unconscious in your books, it's really 6 and 7. It's a lot of 6.
Yeah, I know.
Because the 7 is like the feeling part of it, that the 6 is like all of like the way we associate things, the perceptual part of it. Yeah. So okay. So take vacations. So again, I do this in the Wheel of Bliss with people. A daily vacation, meaning even if it's start with 5 minutes, but even if it's 10 minutes where you're going to put the phone down, you're just going to be quiet. A weekly meditation, meaning once a week, you would take a day, like don't drive and just have that, kind of like the Sabbath. It's a brilliant idea, what they do in the Old Testament. Then the monthly, maybe take a month long vacation, but then once in a while, maybe take a year vacation and like do something really, again, because plugging into this field, it's so productive, it's so healing. You know what I mean? So we know stress kills us, right? So plugging into the field is the opposite. Stress is trying to control the 8. The opposite of stress is ecstasy, which is to just feel
Step
that
outside the 8.
Yeah, so outside the 8. And again, another thing about 7, again, the hippies, is community. It's like that child with we're trying to live in a big city, 2 parents working, the kids got to go here. Like there's just so much disconnect from the food. So anyway, yeah. So interoception practices. Interoception is a scientific word to explain what I was saying. The Buddha explained 2,600 years ago, that inner sense of feeling. So yoga, Tai Chi, people, again, have these spiritual experiences, but a lot of people who are the yoga people, they do yoga for 40 years. They never go past the 7. It's just like, because the 7, it is, compared to the 8, it feels timeless. But remember, it's rising also compared to the 6. It's rising actually. The 6 actually.
See, you're starting to give stuff away, but you're right. You're right.
Okay. And then, walking is one of my favorites. Walking is great for all the elements. So is jogging, We'll talk about that. Massage. So again, getting a massage, but don't fall asleep during the massage. Don't talk during the massage. Tune into your body as much as possible. Because there is that's part of how this field works also. It's like a resonance. Like you consciously tune in, and then and then you're plugged in. Like you plug in by tuning in. So just getting the massage, but your mind is somewhere else, is not going to work. You have to keep your attention with the feeling, and then boom, you plug into the field.
Nice.
Sound healing is popular. Like there's like these tuning forks, the didgeridoo I play. You play those vibrations are good. Sweet foods in general, fruits in general are the best. Yeah.
Really? Put you in flow. That's why people like sweet stuff. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Again, a lot of people, but think about it. If you're like, I need this, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I feel lonely, I need this candy. Yeah. But if you're if you eat a grapefruit, especially if you grow it and you pick it, and you pick this blueberries in season, and you can see the field is giving you the blueberries, and so that's what I mean by sweet foods, and we talked about with Dr. Lou how human breast milk has more carbs and less protein than any other mammal. So we like sweet stuff for a reason. And it's so funny. I hear all these people, I hate my life. I gave up carbs and I'm losing weight, but I'm miserable. It's like, anyway, yeah. Dark chocolate has something called theobromide, which increases oxytocin.
Okay.
Chocolate is amazing, and the better quality, the better. And you could drink a hot cocoa, but chocolate is incredibly good for the theobromide. They call it a heart opener.
Okay.
Warm bath. This is my favorite. So warm baths, they increase oxytocin tremendously. Nice. So that's one of my secrets is take a warm bath. In Japan, it's been a tradition for thousands of years. They would, the whole family would use the same bath water. Like you would shower and clean yourself with soap, then you go in the bath, and then, so, but warm baths and we talked about making love. Like that's the most obvious one. When we think of connection, we always think about sex, and there's a reason for that. It's the most dangerous, and it's also the most powerful in a sense to get connected to the field. And again, even when we talk about, we could do a whole episode on sex. There's different ways to have sex. So like you could be in a rush, or you can be like, let's plug into the field. And then, the idea is to recognize we're both plugged into the field, and we're just And also remember, every time you're thinking about the field, it's like going back to childhood, going back to innocence. It sounds kind of weird, but yeah, like if you're making good love, you should be feeling more innocent. Whereas what do we do in all the perversion? It's like I feel dirty. I want to, all the.
Yeah, well, the thing that I always say is like really making love is two souls. So those are in the field
Yep.
doing this act through a physical body, but they're really two souls.
That's it.
Versus when people make love completely physical, completely egocentric, completely in the 8,
Yeah.
it's going to be something less. It can still be great, but it's still going to be
Well, it's like
something
what you
less.
said. It's like it's ego. So like it's more like for the guys, they could brag about it, or or like so. All right, so
Nice.
just to kind of wrap this up now is
Okay, so wow, this has been a long episode already, but this is great. This has been amazing. This has been absolutely amazing.
I love it.
So let's hear your final thoughts on the 7.
So remember the 3 principles of the 9. The whole idea of the wheel of bliss is the purpose of the meaning of life is to express our uniqueness in service to all.
Okay.
To draw towards us everything we need to express that, to do that, right?
Okay.
And then 3 is to recognize and dance with the people we can best synergize with. And that happens on the physical, emotional, energetic, and intellectual. So today we're speaking specifically about the emotional synergy, the ecstasy. So it's like, so again, think about it. It's like, again, think about the hippies.
Those are all effects, though. Everything you said about the 9 is an effect. And now if you rethink about everything we've covered, you covered the cause. So this is why you're not going to attain the 9 from the 8, because you don't have the cause. The cause is in one part of the cause is here in the 7. I love this.
Exactly. So, because that's why, like, to go from the 7 to the 9, like the 8 it's a lot less work than we think, because the field is taking care of 90. Like, did we make the seed turn into the food we're eating? No. Like there's like a Zen Buddhist saying, it's like, sitting under the tree, spring comes, the grass grows. Like he's just sitting under the tree, and like like the sun, all these things are set up to create life and things happening. But people in the 8, they feel like they are in. We get the point. Well,
the thing is, I just want to say when I wrote Modeling God, I was coaching people way before I wrote Modeling God, and then I wrote Modeling God to explain principally what I was doing to help people. And the whole thing I explained to people when I was coaching them is you want the wind at your back.
Exactly.
You don't want to be going against the wind. So everything you just said is, look at the wind is going one way,
the 7,
and you can't do anything about it.
Yep.
Are you going to go with the wind, let the wind be to your back, and then you can direct yourself with the wind at your back? Or are you going to fight the wind, and you're never going to win fighting the wind?
Exactly.
But is that what you want to do? Do you want to fight the wind? Good luck with that. So I love what you're saying here is the 7 is this wind or this flow or this field going, this wave. And are you going to surf that wave?
That's it.
There's a surfer hippie
water
concept, right? Or are you going to try to oppose that wave? Good luck opposing the wave.
And you know what? We all oppose the wave, because if we didn't, we'd be already perfect. But the point is, it's just learning. And that's why, again, we just summed up the whole purpose of the whole model of the whole wheel of bliss. The whole purpose of life is, figure out your purpose, be able to know what you need and ask for it, and be with the right people. Sounds simple enough. But how do you do that?
But you got to get outside yourself.
Well, yeah.
That's step 1. Like, how can you do any of that if you don't get outside yourself? Ecstasy, 7. You got to get outside yourself from the 8 to the 7, or you're not going to make it. And you already
are, but it's more like we're going to explain the 7, and there's exercises for the 7, the 6, the 5, because, but when you fully become a Buddha, like it's just like flowing.
Yeah. So obviously, only being in the 7 is not enough.
Exactly.
So obviously, we're gonna have to go back and for sure in the next episode we are going to cover the 5 and the 6. I love what you did with this episode. I think you showed everybody how the 7 and the 8 are interconnected.
Exactly.
I think it would just be frustrating trying to talk about the 6 without talking about the 5.
Well, let's talk about it, because I have a way, and that's where you really come in, because
Okay.
I think it's possible. I think we'll see.
We can try it, but let's see what
We'll
happens.
do
Let's see
what we
what
did with
happens.
the 8 and the 9. We'll start, and if we do too much with the 8, yeah. But
Okay.
awesome, man. Been fantastic.
Well, this is great. Anything else you want to say before we close this?
Well, no, just I guess what I'll say is, like, well, first of all, yeah, like going back to the right people. So you know the right people because you're connected on all 4 elements. But now we'll talk about the order element. Again, it sounds hippie, sounds new age, but it's the vibe. You go into a place, it's literally a wave. It's a vibe is a wave. Everything is a wave. Like even electromagnetism, everything is waves. So all that wave stuff is really the 7. So when so it's not the only thing, because sometimes, like you and Jonathan, right? At first there wasn't a good vibe, so you connected in the other elements, and then but learning to just feel that vibe, when you walk into a room, when you meet people, um, and being able to be vulnerable, but still feel like you're one organism. I think that's the key. and,
Amazing.
and like living as though we're one organism, but separate cells. And yeah, just like the fact that, yeah, like you were saying, you did bring it up, the 7 and the 8, the interplay between them.
Yeah.
It's like the nodal points, like that arises slightly quicker, and then the 8 is the appearance. And yeah,
It's our perception. If you think about it, the 7, it rises, and the 8 is almost our perception of it,
it's a good way to put it.
understanding of it.
That's a good way to put it. And it's not meant to do, because again, there's the 8 that separates from the 7, and then it goes back into the 9. So there's 2 parts to all of these, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, man, I think that's good.
Awesome. Great episode, Jason. This was amazing. We'll see what we end up talking about next time. We'll talk in between, but I think clearly we can see how you can't get from the 8 to the 9 without going to the 7. And I think we can clearly see that while some people are able to do the 7 into the 9, they may not be able to do it intentionally, which means they probably got to go back before the 7. So everybody stay tuned. Thank you. Great job, Jason.